Hi, welcome to my interpersonal communication project for HSCO 508, Liberty University Online. My name is Ellen County. I'm going to be sharing with you an experience I had over the last eight weeks in this class. I'll give you a little overview of what kind of an introduction to what we'll be going through. I'll talk to you about an overarching goal, background, my personal background and behavioral blends, potential barriers to communication, identify and provide solutions for noise pollution, internal and external, and you'll understand more about it as I go on and explain it. And finally, I'll kind of wrap it up with an action plan on how I plan on reaching that overarching goal that I set. Next slide. My overarching goal for my life is to become a listener that's able to invite people I encounter into a conversation that is satisfying and enriching. I want to practice communication that impacts both speaker and listener in a way that both leave understanding more about each other and themselves. Really, communication it's very complex and it's ongoing, but it's not as mysterious as sometimes we think about it. Becoming an effective communicator allows you to enjoy more of a more rich social life. Next slide. Behavioral blends comes from a uniquely used assessment that we took online. It was a great tool. It really was the catalyst for a lot of learning in this class. Carbonell developed a disc, which is 4 different personality types that's broken up to active and passive and people-oriented and task-oriented. It's a great tool. I'm going to talk to you more about my own personal blend. My personal blend for the expected me or the public me was an S, and an S is considered a steady specialist. We tend to be sensitive, steady, stable, have a servant's heart, I have a humble spirit, I'm sacrificing, and I'm soft-hearted. Challenges that I might experience from being those things are that I'm easily hurt, sometimes I'm taken advantage of, I experience burnout, I can be vulnerable, and I like to be behind the scenes, but I like to impact what I'm doing. I have a tendency to overdo, and most importantly, what I learned through this class is it's not just overdoing for myself. I have a tendency to overdo for other people, which then, in a sense, robs them of their ability to do for themselves. I also added flexible boundaries, that I have a tendency to allow myself to stretch boundaries in order to help people, when in fact boundaries are there for a purpose in order to help others help themselves. Next slide. So the expected me is my response to how I think people want me to behave. It's my guarded, masked behavior, and I actually had kind of a problem with that definition. It bothered me when I heard the word masked, and it's something I'm going to delve deeper into as I continue on working myself through the process of becoming a counselor. But masked to me makes me think of someone as being fake, and I think the guarded piece is more relevant, that we do present ourselves publicly in a different way. It'll be interesting to find out why the masked piece really kind of offended me in a way. So what's important to me about this is that I grow to realize that I don't have to be defined as the world sees me. The world may see me that way, but that's not how I'm defined. Next slide. And I reminded myself of that by finding God's Word. Forget not to be patient with yourself. Forget not the difference between good and foolish sacrifices. Forget not to be happy now, something I really need to work on. Forget not the why of the gospel, and forget not that the Lord loves you. He loves you, and I chose Psalm 139:14 to remind myself of that. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. Next slide. So behavioral blends, the next thing I move to is the real me. The me that happens at home. The me that happens when I'm with my friends and, you know, at the grocery store that I'm really familiar with. And the people that I'm not just acquaintances with, but close. So what works for being a competent, steady doer, which means I'm a CSD blend, is that I'm hardworking, I'm encouraging to other people, I'm peacemaking, I'm conscientious and law-abiding, I'm optimistic, verbal, and patient. What challenges that brings me when I'm with the people that I love is that I worry an awful lot about them and everything else. I have a low level of enthusiasm. It might even look as if I'm bored, but it's just a lot of internal thinking that goes on. I can be reserved. I'm very fearful. I've come so far in that, you know, just I let God rule over that fear. I'm quite serious, and I have a need to be in control of my environment. It could be as simple as making sure everything's picked up around me because it helps me to make sense of my world. And I can be critical. I can look at, especially with my children and with people I really love, it perplexes me, but that's how it goes. This is going to give me some tools to work on that. So the this is me is my response to how I think and feel under pressure, how I really think inside. This is the normal unmasked me. And again, it's that masked piece that I think really bothers me. It makes me think of being an imposter in some way. And I feel like we are who we are in the two different places because of, and we'll get into that, our background and the different things that have happened in our lives. What's important to me is that I treat the people I love with the same kindness and compassion that I do others. And something I really have to think about and I have to be cautious of. I find that I have to go back to the people I love often and express my regret for things that I've said in anger or in quickness, where I would never do that in public or with other people that I don't trust. Next slide. Again, I went back to the Word and I looked at these things will endure. The greatest of these is love. And now these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. 1 Corinthians 13:13. And I really do believe that communication and becoming effective at that is a demonstration of love. That our demonstration of communicating and listening effectively with people, connecting with them, is really just an extension of Christ's love for us. And so that is a way of sharing the gospel, is by being a good listener, by having an empathetic heart. So again, this class just really gave me practical ways of seeing communication as a means to a better life for everyone. So my background, my parents were educators. I was middle of 3 children, grew up in a small town in Maine. Those influences helped me to deal with talking with many different people. I became a very diplomatic kid. Everybody knew my name because of where I grew up, so I felt very comfortable. Next slide. That background and my behavioral blends has a lot of positive effects. I am able to achieve a higher level of listening. I'm tolerant and I'm accepting. The negative is that low enthusiasm level. People might interpret me as being a bit dull because I'm not really spontaneous, and I'm very cautious when considering doing anything that may not be okay. The barriers I have are the flat brain syndrome. That's that emotional residue that wells up in your gut and then pushes into your heart, which then can become kind of brittle and hard. And then that pushes up and causes your brain to go flat, and that's when everything becomes distorted. Your thinking and your, what you're hearing and your thinking and everything that's going, the reasoning around you goes haywire. I really want to work on that. I identified with it immensely. I'm very in tune with my gut as an indicator of how I'm communicating and how I'm receiving information. Next slide. Noise pollution is something I have to work on. That's another barrier. It's something I was supposed to talk about, and I thought I'd just combine them. The internal noise pollution that I really work on is the attention, reception, perception. You know, I have a tendency sometimes, as I'm paying attention, to get nervous about what's coming, and I might receive it differently, or through my perception I haven't received it the way. Hot buttons, different words, or things that people say can make me feel anxious, and then I may react in a way that's not as effective. Externally, noises that don't make sense to me, room temperature, getting really distracted with what somebody's doing or their voice level can really distract me. All this leads to enlarging the conversation, and all enlarging the conversation is taking responsibility for the feelings and thoughts that belong to you and or to myself, and then creating an openness and communication that just makes it clear to other people that I care about them, I want to listen to them. As a preschool teacher, getting down on my knees and being face to face with children every day, it's taught me how to be open and aware of my communication. So, in closing up, my action plan is driven mostly by my understanding that communication is complex, it's ongoing, and it's collaborative. And my ability to stay in the presence with the people I'm communicating with is going to be my best tool. And thank you, and have a good day.